Hi everyone, I'm Bia and welcome back to Car Deck Ready for Teens. For those of you who may not know, Car Deck Ready for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens and learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes sense to us as teens in today's society. For the last few weeks, we've been going through a question 222, which has been taking some time because it actually wasn't really a question, but it was kind of the Spirits summing up what they were talking about. So it went on for a few pages, so we were stuck on that question for a while. But now we've come to the end of it. Last week we came to the end of it, and we moved on to a new chapter. And this chapter is about spirit life, and we started talking about the errant spirits. And these errant spirits, they're the disincarnated spirits. So they're the ones not like us on Earth right now, but when you're in the spirit world. That's the kind of spirits we're talking about right now. So we left off on question 227, so we'll get right to it and start it off there. And for those of you who aren't following along in the book, the questions and how it's formatted, this book, is that the Allan Kardec, he asked the spirits a question, and then the spirits answered, and so it clearly shows that the question is in italics and the answers are in quotations, and sometimes when Allan Kardec puts his own comment in, it's in a smaller writing so that you know for sure who is saying what. So question 227. How do errant spirits learn, since they can hardly be in the same way as for us? So here they're saying is, how do the disincarnated spirits, how do they learn? Because it probably isn't the same way that we learn here on Earth. So they're asking, okay, how do they learn? And the spirits answered, they study their past and seek ways to evolve. They watch and observe what is going on in the realms through which they pass. They listen to the discourse of enlightened individuals and the council of spirits who are more evolved than they are, and this provides them with ideas that they do not yet possess. So the question was kind of right, that they don't learn the same way that we do, just like sitting in a classroom and reading books and stuff like that, but they're looking at their past, because now they see their past, so they're seeing what they've done, ways to improve, and they're observing what else is going around so that they can think, oh wow, I've never done that, maybe I should try that. Or they're listening to more enlightened people and they're trying to catch their ideas. So in that way, it's kind of similar. It's like they're listening to a teacher and they're kind of being inspired to do better things. And they're looking at around them and what they've done and what they didn't do, and they're trying to learn from their mistakes, kind of reflecting on what they did while incarnated. Question 228. Do spirits retain any of the human passions? So do the spirits have our human passions? Or while they're in a planet such as Earth, when they go back to the spirit world, do they still have their passions? And the spirits answered, upon losing their corporeal envelope, high-order spirits leave evil passions behind and retain only the ideals of good. But low-order ones retain their passions, otherwise they would belong to the first order. So what they're saying here is that the high-order spirits, the spirits who are higher up and already more evolved, once they leave the corporeal world, once they're not on a physical world, then they leave those evil passions behind. They don't have to really think about them anymore. They only take the good because they're higher, they're more evolved. But those lower ranking ones, they do still carry on their evil passions, because or else that would just make them perfect. That would make them evolved without even doing anything. So even though you're going back to the spirit world, you still hold on to those passions that you have, unless you're very evolved. Question 229. When they leave the earth behind, why don't spirits abandon their evil passions, since they are able to see the troubles they can cause? The spirits answered, in your world, there are persons who are excessively jealous, for instance. Do you believe they will lose that defect upon leaving? After they leave the earth, since they are not entirely free from matter, especially those who have displayed strong passions, they retain a sort of atmosphere around them that is infused with all their evil qualities. Their only occasional glimpse at the truth so as to have the moral path revealed to them. So the question here was saying that why don't spirits, once they get to the spirit world and see, wow, me doing this thing, that was bad, let me leave it behind. Why don't they do that? Why don't they leave it behind once they see that it can cause them trouble? And they said, they put an example. So like someone who's excessively jealous over everything, over what people have, what people do, who they are family with. So extremely jealous. So just because they left the earth doesn't mean they can snap a finger and make it go away. That quality is still with them and still around them, like they're saying here. And even though they see the truth a little bit, it's still not enough to completely make them realize that they need to change yet. Question 230. Can a spirit progress while in the errant state? So, can a spirit progress, evolve, while they are disincarnated? And the spirits answered, it may improve itself a great deal. It always depends on its own will and desire. However, it puts its newly acquired ideas into practice only during corporeal life. So what they're saying here is that, yeah, you can improve a lot. You can learn a lot while you're in the spirit world, while you're disincarnated. But you still have to put what you learn to test. And putting it to test is where you're going to be incarnated and face those challenges and then do the right thing. So you can evolve, but to truly, let's say, pass the next level, you need to put it into practice, put it into test to see that you actually mastered it, not just the idea. Because it's easy to sit here and say, oh yeah, we have to help everyone. But then when you're actually faced with a chance that you have to choose, oh, should I help this person right now or should I just help myself? A lot of times we are still selfish and help ourselves. So sometimes it's a lot easier to just learn and to understand the concept, but you need to put it into practice. So we can improve a lot in the spirit world, but you do have to have that final test to make sure that, and if you do pass the test, let's say, on Earth, then you move on and you did good, so it wouldn't really affect you either way. Question 231. Are errant spirits happy or unhappy? And the spirits answered, their degree of happiness or unhappiness depends on what they have merited. They either suffer from the passions whose essence they have retained, or they are happy according to their degree of dematerialization. In the errant state, a spirit realizes what it lacks in order to be happier. Thus, it searches for the means to attain it. However, it is not always permitted to reincarnate when it wants to. This in itself is a punishment. So, the question was quite simple. Are they happy or unhappy? And it depends on you. It depends on your spirit, because if you did good things and you're really evolving and you're doing the right things, then you're going to be happier. But if you did a lot of bad things, you made a lot of mistakes, and now you're seeing all those mistakes in front of you and you're regretting all you did, then you might be suffering. You won't be happy. And maybe it's happy according to different people. Some people are happy when they don't have as much, but they're happy. Some people want to be, because happiness is not perfect. So happiness really depends on the person and what they feel is happy to them. And also that, like they said at the end, how it's not always permitted to reincarnate when it wants to. So that can be a punishment. So maybe they sit there and they say, okay, I made this mistake, I want to go back to fix it, and they say, oh, you can't right now, so then they won't really be happy. So it really depends on a case-to-case basis. Question 232. While in the errant state, can spirits visit other worlds? The spirits answered, that depends. When the spirit leaves the body, it is still not completely disconnected from matter. Hence, it still belongs to the worlds of which it has lived, or to the one of the same degree, unless it has progressed sufficiently during its lifetime. Progression is the purpose to which it must hold, for it will never perfect itself unless it progresses. Nevertheless, it may go to certain more highly evolved worlds, but as an outsider, it can only get glimpses of such worlds, and these glimpses are what drive it to improve itself, so that it may become worthy of the happiness enjoyed on them, and to be able to inhabit them later. So that was a big answer, so we'll break that up. But they were saying, so can the spirits visit other worlds? And again, they said that depends, because a lot of this, there's not one answer. It's kind of on a case-to-case basis. So they said that when the spirit leaves the body, it's not completely disconnected. You're not automatically just disconnected from everything. So you still have some ties, like us. We'll still have some ties from Earth. We'll still be pretty connected to Earth and how life was on Earth. But unless you progressed enough, you evolved enough that, okay, now it's your time to move on to another world. Then you will move to a different world and visit other worlds. But it's about this progress, and until you progress, you're not going to move on to other worlds unless it's a world that's at the same level as Earth, or maybe if you need to go to a lower level to help the lower level, then you can do that, but you can't just go to anyone that you want. It's not like a vacation. It all has a purpose. And they said sometimes you do get to go visit to see a glimpse of it, so that you want to do good because you want to get there. You want to achieve that, and you want to be there and have that happiness. But those are only glimpses. You don't actually go and hang out in other worlds unless there's a purpose for it. Question 233. Do spirits who are already purified ever go to less evolved worlds? So, spirits who are already purified, who are getting to perfection or at perfection, do they go to less evolved worlds? And the spirits answered, they frequently do so in order to help such worlds progress. Without these spirits, these worlds would be left to themselves, without guides to direct them. So here they're saying quite simply that, yeah, like we were talking about a little bit before, how they go back to help those planets. Like Jesus didn't have to come to Earth. He was way above Earth. But he came to Earth to help us, because if we didn't have Jesus as a model, and a lot of other highly evolved spirits come as a model to us, like let's say Mother Teresa or Socrates, or people that have guided us, if they didn't come, then we wouldn't be guided and we would be struggling to improve ourselves. So they came to help us and to help our worlds evolve. So it's not that they need to learn anything from that, but they are coming to help us. And then we're going to move on now to the next part in this chapter, which is called Transitional Worlds. Question 234. As some have stated, are there worlds that serve as layover and resting places for errant spirits? So they're saying, so are there worlds that are kind of in between phases, in between reincarnations? It's like a little hotel that you stay in for a little bit of time, like a resting place. And the spirits answered, yes, there are worlds that are intended particularly for errant beings, worlds that they may temporarily inhabit, a type of campsite, a place where they can repose during a very long errant state, a state that is always somewhat wearisome. These are intermediate positions between worlds and are graduated according to the nature of the spirits who have access to them, and where they will enjoy a greater or lesser sense of well-being. So, like we were saying, like little hotels, it's like they said, like campsites. So there are these places, especially because sometimes it takes a long time to reincarnate again. So you can stay there, and here it says, depending on you, you'll be with spirits of your level and kind of on the same wavelengths as all those people. So it depends on you of how happy you're going to be, or your sense of well-being, like they said here. And then there's a second part to this question, and it says, can the spirits who occupy such worlds leave whenever they wish? The spirit said, yes. Spirits who temporarily inhabit those worlds can leave them to follow their destiny. Imagine them to be like migrating birds that descend on an island in order to regain strength before continuing on their way. So that was a really good example that they put there. So saying, okay, the birds, they're migrating. We're going somewhere far, far away, but we need to have a little pit stop, a little rest. So we rest on an island, and then when you're ready, you go and you move on, and you continue your journey. And if you're not ready, you can just stay there. So you can leave when you wish, because it's just sort of a rest stop for you. Question 235. Do spirits progress during their layover on these transitory worlds? So is there any progression when they're on these worlds? And the spirits answered, certainly. Those who gather on them do so with the purpose of educating themselves in order to more easily obtain permission to go to better and better places until they reach the position of the elect. So, of course, these spirits who they're going to these transitory worlds, they're trying to educate themselves and improve so that they can go to better places and not be stuck where they are right now. Question 236. Due to their special nature, are these transitional worlds destined forever to be layovers for errant spirits? And the spirits answered, no, that function is only temporary. So what they're saying here is, these transitional worlds, are they always just going to be a little rest stop, a little campsite, or are they going to be full actual worlds that people reincarnate into? And the spirit said, no, the function is only temporary. So right now it might be just a place for disincarnated spirits to kind of stop by, like the birds landing on the island just for a little bit and then continuing. So right now it might only be that, but one day it might be a world where people incarnate and stay for a lifetime. And then there's a second part to this question, and it says, are they inhabited by corporeal beings at the same time? So they're saying, so are there corporeal beings like us, like humans right now, who are incarnated and have this meat on us? That's what they mean by corporeal beings. So are they inhabited at the same time? And the spirits answered, no, their surface is barren. Those who inhabit them do not need anything. So the disincarnated spirits that are on these transitory worlds, they don't need anything. They don't need corporeal, like our bodies. Our bodies need food. We need to stay clean. We need shelter. We need warmth. So those who inhabit these worlds, they don't need any of those things. And then there's another part to this question, and it says, is this barrenness permanent, and is it connected to their special nature? And the spirit said, no, their barrenness is only transitory. So by barrenness, the actual definition is being incapable to produce offspring, or not being able to produce anything. They're just kind of staying still is kind of the point that they're trying to get across. It's just kind of dull. And so he's saying, is this permanent? And they said, no, this is only, like they said, a transitory. So it's only an in-between state. It's only a little rest stop. It's not going to be permanent. And then this question continues, and it says, then are these worlds destitute of natural beauties? So do they not have naturally beautiful things? And the spirits answered, their nature is expressed in the beauties of their immensity, and their beauties are no less admirable than what you call natural ones. So right here, this sounds a little confusing, but what they're saying is that the nature that's expressed there is beauty, but not in a way that we might see it on a planet like Earth, because it's not like Earth. It's different. As we're saying, it's transitory. It's not not every planet is going to look exactly like Earth, so it could be hard for us to understand. But there are beauties that are the same, are very admirable, but not how the same beauties that we might be talking about here on Earth. And then they say, and there's another question, and it says, since the state of these worlds is transitory, will the earth be among them someday? And the spirits answered, it already has been. So the question was, so the state of these worlds, it's transitory. Sometimes the world is in this transitory state, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's just fully with incarnated people. And so it says, will the earth one day be like that? And they said that it already has. And so then they ask, at what period? So at what time? And they said, during its formation. So what they're saying here is during the formation of the earth, that's when it was in this transitory state, when we didn't really have incarnated beings. Like we know, there was millions of years before actual people incarnated like we know it today. So during its formation, it was just a transitory world. And then Allan Kardec has his own comment, and he says, nothing in nature is useless. Each thing has its purpose, its destination. There is no empty space. Everything is inhabited, and life expands itself everywhere. Thus, during the long series of ages that elapse before the appearance of humankind on the earth, during the long periods of transition assessed to and by geological layers, and even before the formation of the first organic beings upon the formless mass, there was no absence of life in the arid chaos in which the elements were being mixed together. Beings who did not have our needs and our physical sensations found a refuge there. Even in that imperfect state, God willed for it to be useful for something. So who would dare to say that among the billions of worlds that spin through the immensity of space, only one of the smallest, lost in the crowd, had the exclusive privilege of being populated? What would the usefulness of all the others? Could God have made them merely as entertainment for our eyes? Such is an absurd presumption, incompatible with the wisdom that shines in all God's work, and unacceptable if we consider all those that we cannot see. No one can deny that, in this notion of worlds which we are still unsuitable for material life, and which are nevertheless populated with beings appropriate for the conditions on them, there is something grand and sublime, where perhaps we may find the solution to more than one problem. So that was really long, so let's break that up. So what they're saying is that there's nothing in the beginning. What they're saying is there's no empty space. Everything that God created has a purpose. He didn't create something just to sit there and look pretty and not have anything happening. So there was a purpose. So like for us, if we're just looking at it in a scientific way, that there was millions and millions of years where the earth was just forming and there wasn't life on it. So it's kind of like, what's the point? But the point is that it was a transitional world. So the spirits who were disincarnated, they didn't need the corporeal and material stuff that we needed. So they could use it as a rest stop. And in all that chaos that was just mixing elements, like they're saying, for them it was fine, and it was a resting spot for them, and they were able to find refuge there, like a campsite. So even though it was in that phase of transitory, God made sure it was useful for something. So all these planets that we see, it wouldn't make sense if it was just there to look pretty. There is something useful. There's a purpose for it being there, and no one can really deny that, is what they're trying to say here. And then we're going to move on now to the next section of this chapter, which is called Perceptions, Sensations, and Suffering of Spirits. So question 237. Once in the world of spirits, Does the soul still have the perceptions it had in this life? And the Spirit said, yes, and others that it did not have, because its body was like a veil that obscured them. Intelligence is a natural attribute of the Spirit, but it expresses more freely when it is unshackled. So they're saying that is our perception, how we view things in life, is that the same when we disincarnate? And they said yes. And also we have more that we did not have on earth. Because on earth, like when you go to the spirit world, like we've mentioned a couple of times, how you can see your past lives and you can reflect on what you've did, and you kind of see your whole life before you with all your many reincarnations. So on earth, we don't have that perception of that way of looking at life as, wow, I've done all of this throughout various reincarnations and this is why this is happening to me. We don't have the perception on earth or incarnated right now. So they're saying that we have the same perception and sometimes even more, because we see a little bit more than was allowed to us on earth or on an incorporeal state. Question 238. Are the perceptions and understanding of spirits unlimited? In other words, do they know everything? And the spirits answer, the nearer they approach perfection, the more they know. If they are higher order spirits, they know much. Low order spirits are more or less ignorant on all subjects. So here they're saying, so do spirits, kind of when you disincarnate, do you know everything? Do you have unlimited knowledge? And they said it doesn't really depend on if you're incarnated or disincarnated, but it's about your evolution, how far you've progressed. So if you're closer to perfection, then you know a lot more. But if you're still in the lower orders, then you kind of don't know anything. Like they're saying, you're ignorant on almost all subjects. Question 239. Do spirits comprehend the beginning of things? And the spirits answered, that too depends on how evolved and purified they are. Low order spirits do not know any more than humans. So again, they say, do they comprehend the beginning of things? Like maybe the beginning of the world or the beginning of whatever world they want, or a population. So do they understand the beginning of things? And again, they're saying that this isn't about really if you're incarnated, if you're on earth, or if you're disincarnated in the spirit world. It's all just about how evolved and purified you are. So, like we were saying, those highly evolved spirits, they're going to understand the beginning of things, and they're going to know a lot more. But the lower order spirits, they're not going to know any more than us humans. It's the same. If you didn't learn it at some point, you're not just automatically going to know everything. So that's where we'll leave off in that today, and we'll continue off talking about more of the way that spirits perceive things next week. But to leave off today, I'd like to read our message for today, May 9th. Giving comfort. Grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand. When we can be useful to others, rather than merely hoping that they will be useful to us, we are better people for it. What's more, we are happier. To understand others, we need to really listen to them rather than making assumptions or hearing with only half our attention because we are eager to make our own points. People have given me comfort and understanding when I needed it. I hope I can do as well for others. I'm Bia, and this is Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.